Good morning, everyone. It is very good to be with you this morning. Welcome to First Unitarian Church. We're a multi-generational community that strives to put love at the center. Here we come together to tend our spirits, care for one another, and work for justice. And you are welcome here. Whether you're here in the sanctuary today or joining us online, we are so glad you are with us this morning. Following the service, I invite you to join fellow congregants for a social hour just below us in Fuller Hall. And if you're a regular congregant who's lucky enough to be sitting next to a newcomer, invite them to join you for coffee hour. And if you're new this morning or want to find out a little bit more about our congregation and ask some questions, I invite you to join our membership engagement coordinator, Jen Thomas, for a brief welcome circle following the service over here in the gallery to your right. I have just a couple of announcements this morning. This is the third Sunday of the month, which means it is Singing Sunday. So we invite you to join Rich and Gilda downstairs in Fuller Hall after service to make a joyful noise and learn some protest songs that will help lift our spirits and keep us motivated for the work ahead. And we are in a season rich with religious holidays and opportunities for spiritual practice and renewal. Registration is open for our Passover Seder on April 13th, and our online Monday morning Matins for Lent series begins March 24th. And Reverend Alison and I are busy planning Monday, Thursday, and Good Friday services, so make sure you pay attention to our e-news for all of the details about how you can worship and celebrate with us this spring. And now let us take a moment to greet our neighbors and say hello this morning.
I just got word that we may be having tech difficulties, so I did notice as I walked in there were some words missing from the screen. So we'll do our best. And part of the holiday of Purim is being able to find humor when things don't go your way. So we begin already. To the folks at home, we invite you to grab a candle or a chalice. We're going to begin our worship together by lighting the symbol of our faith, and let us say together in unison, "We are Unitarian Universalists. We light this chalice in faith, in hope, and in love." And our call to worship comes from number 434 in your gray hymnal for those of you that might want to look it up afterwards at home if you have it there. Anonymous. May we be reminded here of our highest aspirations and inspired to bring our gifts of love and service to the altar of humanity. May we know once again that we are not isolated beings, but connected in mystery and miracle to the universe, to this community, and to each other. So may it be this hour and in all the days ahead. What a joy to have Parker Bells with us, and how fitting for the choir is named for Theodore Parker, a minister who was committed to the spirit of freedom that moves through this service. And for anyone who was thinking, I used to be in a bells choir and really loved it. Garrett leads the choir, and they meet on Wednesday evenings, and you could translate that idea into a reality. And now I'm delighted to welcome Chris Tanner to our pulpit. She's going to sharing the light testimonial for the Committee on Houselessness and Hunger.
Good morning. I'm Chris Tanner, and I've been a member of First Unitarian for 34 years. Hard to believe. Lisa, my wife, and I raised our children in this church. It's been our spiritual home through both challenging and joyful times. Over the years, we've served on boards and committees, sung in the choir, taught in RE, and volunteered for efforts that have nurtured us. About 5 years ago, I got involved with the Committee on Hunger and Homelessness, or COHO. My Northeast Portland neighborhood, like many neighborhoods, was seeing a rise in the number of people experiencing homelessness, and it seemed that little progress had been made by our city and county in creating more affordable housing. A radical question raised from this pulpit was, what if we offered hospitality instead of hostility to our houseless neighbors? What a thought. That question animated many discussions among my neighbors, inspiring us to consider what we could do to provide shelter and other basic needs to those living outside. I joined with others to reach out to our houseless neighbors, visiting them often twice weekly to offer food, water, and clean clothing. We heard people's stories, and we also saw the effects of ongoing and inhumane sweeps. At that time, the only choice for shelter was in large congregate shelters with rules and restrictions that were a barrier for many. We learned how, in other places, small, low-income, low-barrier villages with no more than a dozen guests were helping people transition into permanent housing. We began to dream of building that kind of neighborhood village offering safety and community, a place to heal from the traumas of life on the streets and to build the strength and resources necessary to move into permanent housing. Our group founded a new nonprofit called We Shine for welcoming, empowering, safe habitation initiative with neighborhood involvement. Tried to capture everything it was about. We actually came up with the acronym and then figured out the words that went with it. So we met with our group founded this new nonprofit, and we met with the UCC congregation in Parkrose that was interested in hosting a village. We drew up a good neighbor agreement with the congregation, neighbors, and We Shine, and set out to build our first village. I had no idea how hard that would be. But along with scores of dedicated volunteers, we opened our first village in Parkrose in 2022. With funding from the Joint Office, We Shine is opening its third village next month in North Portland, serving older people and those with disabilities. COHO this year is supporting We Shine and its second village, raising funds, providing meals and supplies, and doing a gift drive at Christmas time for the villagers. Despite our progress, it's clear that unsheltered homelessness and hunger in Oregon won't end soon, and more reason for us to double down on the work. COHO hopes that many of you will join us in striving to mitigate homelessness, hunger, and their effects through individual and collective acts in serving, advocating, and informing. For example, as I mentioned, COHO is supporting We Shine's second village. In addition, we support the Shower Project by recruiting volunteers, and we collect food from this congregation for Lift Up, which serves to reduce food insecurity. We advocate with community and elected officials in Portland, or Multnomah County, and the state of Oregon for positive change on issues and policies. And we strive to inform the First Unitarian community about the effects of homelessness and hunger and about initiatives for change. Today, after the service, starting about noon, in the Buchanan Hall, we host a screening of the poignant documentary film, No Place to Grow Old. Set right here in Portland, the film follows 3 older adults aging into homelessness. It's a powerful call to action that emphasizes dignity and hope, envisioning a future for everyone, regardless of age, as would have a safe and secure place to call home. People registered ahead of time, so we believe that we may have a full house. But please feel free to hang out to see if spaces become available. We'd like to pack the house so all can enjoy and see this moving film. There are tables with info about the Shower Project and some of COHO's various projects, including We Shine, out in the foyer by the Buchanan. I hope to see you there. Thank you.
And now let us join together, let us rise in body or spirit in our doxology.
Each week, we share our offering with organizations and community partners who share our values and do the good work of keeping love at the center during a time when that isn't always easy to do. For this church year, we focus on groups that work for the rights and support of migrants. For the month of March, we share our plate with the Oregon Farm Workers Union, PCUN. Its mission is to empower farm workers and working Latinx families in Oregon by building community, increasing Latinx representation in elections and policy advocacy on both the national and state levels. PCUN values the ability of workers to take action against exploitation. They strive to strengthen workers' rights by creating safer workplaces, advocating for fair wages, and pushing for enough economic security to care for families. PCUN was founded by farm workers, and today that legacy continues. In a moment, our ushers will pass baskets in the sanctuary for offerings by cash or check. If you'd like to share your offering online, you can use the tiny URL or QR code on the screen or one of the yellow cards near you in the pews. Thank you very much for your generosity, which helps sustain the mission of this church and our community partners.
So we are sharing the story of Purim, and that is the 10 chapters of the Book of Esther, but we have a shorter version, which is The Queen Who Saved Her People by Tilda Balsley. And remember, you're supposed to have fun and never say that biblical family values reflect all of your values. So be prepared for some shocking twists. And for those of you that have something called groggers, and those that don't have groggers, can you go sss? So every time you hear the name Haman, and just to introduce the players on the stage, we have Catherine playing the sage Mordecai. We have Danielle playing Queen Esther. We have Garrett playing King Ahasuerus. And we have David playing Haman. Here we go. Ahasuerus, Persia's king, was like a puppet on a string. His court decided everything. They said, Queen Vashti won't obey. You need to banish her today.
I'll do it. Yes, I think you're right. I need a queen who will excite. Bring young ladies sweet and fair, but only when you fix their hair. Put perfume here, put perfume there, give them clean underwear, and treat them to free health care. I need a queen. Look everywhere.
Beside the palace lived a Jew. This Mordecai was strong and true. His cousin Esther lived there too. The king's men saw her. All agreed he'd like this lady, guaranteed. Her cousin hugged and kissed her twice and whispered quickly this advice.
No one knows that you're a Jew. That secret must be kept by you.
She didn't tell. Nobody guessed. The king met her and was impressed.
In all ways, she outshines the rest. I'll make her queen. I am obsessed.
Her cousin was around a lot. One day, he overheard a plot. Death to the king. He was distraught. He warned the queen. The men were caught.
This Mordecai, write his name down to note the day he saved my crown.
The king then made a huge mistake, promoting Haman. What a snake!
Fantastic, I'm a VIP. Now everyone will bow to me.
But faithful Mordecai said,
No, I won't bow to that so-and-so.
Insulted, evil Haman vowed,
When I get through, he'll wish he'd bowed. I'll crush them all, the Jewish crowd.
a lot or poor helped set the date for Haman's plan. He couldn't wait.
Oh, king, those people over there, they break your laws. How do they dare? Let me destroy them everywhere.
Sure, you can do it. I don't care.
The month of Adar, day 13. All Jews, young, old, and in between, will die. Yes, I'll enjoy that scene.
So Mordecai put sackcloth on. The sounds of grief were loud and long.
Something is very wrong. Please explain this, Mordecai. The whole Megillah, what and why?
Haman is a dangerous man. He's put in place an evil plan. Your people need you. Beg the king, for only he can fix this thing.
Me beseech the king? I cannot ask him anything. It's death for those who dare to go, unless invited. You should know.
This place, this hour, may be why God gave you this power.
Esther was convinced at last.
Tell all the Jews to pray and fast, and after 3 whole days have passed, I will do this thing that you have asked.
And now, Esther and the whole community pray together.
And now we will join together in prayer. During our service each week, we take time to hold the prayer intentions of our community. If you're here in person, you're always invited to light a candle of intention in one of our galleries. And if you're online, you can send them to prayer at firstunitarianportland.org. And if you have a concern that you would like named in a Sunday service from the pulpit, you can send those to parishconcerns at firstunitarianportland.org. Our ministers and lay ministers are here to hold your prayers and provide care throughout the week. I have one concern to share this morning. Alyssa Lee Smith's mother, Marcia Smith, had knee replacement surgery this past week. Alyssa is in Spokane to support the recovery process for a couple of weeks. The family would appreciate our prayers of healing and wellness during this time. Will you join me in a spirit of prayer? Spirit of life, be with us this morning as we gather together in worship to tell this very old story. Open our hearts so that it may come alive for us in our own place and time, and we might hear what new meaning it holds for us today. Help us to stay vigilant to injustice and actions that threaten human life and dignity. Help us to be brave and defiant, cunning and caring when it matters most. In Spirit of Life, this morning we give thanks for the diversity and pluralism of this faith community, where we can celebrate with and learn from our friends and neighbors observing Purim, Lent, Ramadan, the spring equinox, and Nowruz, the Persian New Year. We ask that you help us to be present to the gifts and lessons of this sacred season, the freedom found in letting go, the wisdom that comes from wandering in the wilderness, and the hope of longer days and new blooms. May these ancient stories and practices be reminders that we are not alone, that we are not the first people to face sorrow and loss, to search for meaning, to struggle against injustice, and to work for liberation. May these holy days remind us of the power of community, ritual, and storytelling, and the wisdom of our ancestors, sacred text, and spiritual practices. Spirit of Life, may this be a community where all know themselves welcome and beloved, where we honor our individual beliefs, varied traditions, and collective hopes, where we come together to share stories of love and liberation, challenge and comfort, and in doing so, deepen our relationships with one another and our commitment to healing and serving this broken, beautiful, blessed world. May it be so. Amen. Now let us share in a few moments of silence together. Now let us stay seated and join in our next hymn, Let There Be Light.
Now it was time. She faced her fear, and when the king saw Esther near, he said,
Come in, I want to hear. What's your desire, my queen, my dear?
A special dinner I'll prepare. Can you and Haman both be there?
The king at dinner asked once more,
What do you want? Please, I implore.
Dear king, don't think I'm impolite. Just come to dinner one more night. I'll tell you then. Please say all right.
As Haman left, his mood was great until he saw parked at the gate
Mordecai, the Jew I hate.
his wife said, Build a gallows high.
A good idea, my sweetie pie.
At his palace, curtain drawn, the restless king, still up at dawn, flipped through his journal with a yawn.
Mordecai, what does this say? It seems he saved my life one day. Did we declare a holiday? Did we give him a little bonus pay, a silver medal anyway?
Now guess who just then happened by?
Let's hang that Mordecai.
The king invited Haman in, and Haman smiled a wicked grin.
Haman, tell me how I ought to know to honor someone. What's your thought?
And Haman, sure, he was the man, laid out a very special plan.
A royal horse with royal crown, a royal escort through the town.
I love a parade. What a delight. Find Mordecai this very night. Tomorrow we ride through this very street. Praise him to everyone you meet.
So Haman had no choice, of course. His rival rode the royal horse. Meanwhile, Esther cooked for three. The dinner party seemed carefree. But then the brave queen snuggled near and whispered in her husband's ear.
My people live in deathly fear, and only you can help, it's clear.
What? My Esther, tell me who has dared to threaten all of you?
He's with us now, still drinking wine. He's no friend of yours or mine.
The king saw Haman's guilty look.
You'll get yours, you wicked crook.
So Haman swung on gallows high, those built to hang poor Mordecai. Now the tables had been turned. Jews enjoyed a peace hard earned. Nor for following the king's command, no enemy was left to stand. And Mordecai, the king's right hand, sent this message through the land.
Let every generation read how on these days the Jews were freed. Through Esther's brave and selfless deed, let there be time for joy and laughter at Purim now and ever after.
The end. Joy is an act of resistance. Joy is an act of resilience. As poet and professor Ross Gay puts it, my hunch is that joy emerging from our common sorrow, which does not necessarily mean we have the same sorrows, but that sorrow might draw us together. It might depolarize us enough that we can consider what in common we love. Protestants, Catholics, and Jews all share the Book of Esther in common. However, within Judaism, the first religion to include this book as part of the canon, it takes on particularly resonant meanings. This is about both the story itself and the annual traditions that have grown up around the telling. While I was raised Unitarian Universalist, my family also celebrated Shabbat on a regular basis and attended Jewish services from time to time to connect more deeply with my mother's faith, which nourished our own. The Purim services I have been to over my lifetime are some of the most memorable and sometimes the most frightening. I do remember a retelling where Haman seemed like a fire-breathing dragon. I don't know exactly what happened on the bema that day. Purim is an everything is topsy-turvy, joyful, and raucous celebration. It is a bit like Carnival, and it may be that the two holidays influenced one another. It involves drinking, making merry, wearing costumes, gender bending. There are at least 3 genders in the story, and putting on plays called Purim spiels and satire. There is a tradition that you're supposed to get so drunk that you cannot tell the difference between blessed be Mordecai and cursed be Haman. Drinking was even known to happen on the bema during the telling of the story, which involves the characters getting drunk at points. Today, it is celebrated in ways in which people are more mindful and inclusive, with mocktails alongside of cocktails if drinks are involved. At the Jewish school my son attended when he was little, many of the families called it Jewish Halloween. Part of the tradition of the holiday is not just to tell the story, but to try it on. People dressed up as King Ahasuerus, Queen Esther, Haman, Vashti, and Mordecai. But they also dress up as their favorite superheroes or villains from other tales. Some of you might have even noticed your Jewish friends and relatives on social media feeds filling with what looked like last October Halloween costumes. But no, it was that Purim was celebrated on Thursday and Friday. The surprising context of this joyful anticipation of spring holiday is the retelling of the Scroll of Esther, a biblical farce about people living under the thumb of empire building with the constant threat of violence and erasure as their companions. However, through the traditions that accompany it, we explore the joy that leads to surviving and thriving, and share in laughter at the expense of the wicked and the powerful. On one hand, subjects like the abuse of power and genocide are no laughing matter. On the other hand, this story is one of the early examples of gallows humor. One of the most striking features about the holiday is the custom of making noise during the service at the temple or at a Unitarian Universalist congregation when we share the story together. There is a frequent and loud disruption every time you hear Haman's name said, as children and adults twirl a grogger or a rattle to blot out his name and prevent Haman from being heard or remembered. Incidentally, before the groggers were used in the synagogue, just get ready, those of you who are holding it in your hands might feel differently about it in a minute. they were originally used as a Christian folk tradition in Europe leading up to Easter and in connection with the burning of Judas. While the custom wasn't sanctioned by the church, it was widespread up to the 20th century. An effigy of Judas was first hanged and then burned, and then groggers were twirled to symbolize the grinding of Judas's bones. It is then a reversal that out of what was a public, communal, and often became a very anti-Semitic, violent ritual against Judas, and then often enacted against Jews, that grogger entered the synagogue and is used to counter the anti-Semite in the Purim story named Haman. On one hand, groggers are a lot of fun to play with when you are a child and even older. We all love noisemakers. On the other hand, we may feel uncomfortable with the twists of the grogger, the toy, and the story where Jews go from nearly being annihilated themselves to becoming violent heroes. King Ahasuerus cannot admit that he was wrong, ever. Cannot admit that he was wrong in this case to acquiesce to Haman's legislation idea of exterminating all the Jews. So instead, he winds up adding a new piece of legislation in the story that they can avenge their attackers. Biblical stories often have layers of complexity to them and aspects that we wish to hear again and again, and parts that we would rather leave behind. In both cases, though, something about human nature is revealed, including the parts about ourselves we wish we could forget. Although the characters are caricatures, they have a way of illuminating and reflecting back real people in every age. As we try on the characters, we might also see bits of ourselves in different aspects of the various characters. This holiday offers us an opportunity for an enlightening and enlivening political analysis of the world out there, as well as for a bit of self-psychoanalysis of our interior world, about our own motives and actions. This year, we could say that the story of Purim is our collective story in the United States and even around the globe. We live in a world with continuing genocides, othering, and racial injustice. We are living in a land under the rule of King Ahasuerus and in a time of empire building. Our land has many similarities with Shushan: rising multiculturalism with diverse peoples living side by side, a growing chasm between the haves and the have-nots, and the ruler's power to prevent harm or to do harm is absolute, or at least he thinks it is. Around him are Haman's seemingly evil advisors who seek to manipulate the easily manipulable king to do their bidding, expelling foreigners, stealing and hoarding power and money, repealing the rights to bodily autonomy, and more. Purim points us towards the roles we humans play in resilience, resistance, and redemption. Esther reminds us that we can be complicit and we can be courageous. The Hebrew root of the name Esther means hidden. For a good portion of the story, she is hiding her identity in order to stay proximate and to receive the safety from power. The turning point comes after Mordecai reminds her that she cannot remain silent and live. She is fooling herself. It is the pathway to death. Everyone else's life and hers depends on her finding courage. Mordecai says, "Perhaps you have risen to power for such a time as this." Esther prays and fasts in solidarity with all her siblings who are oppressed, and finally summons the courage to reveal herself and risk everything, including her life, to save her people. Haman and the exacting revenge against him at the end remind us that we can be selfish, violent, and cruel. We all might have a little bit of Haman within. But Haman himself is a caricature whose greed and lust for power knows no bounds. He seems to be destined for Mars, even. He is associated with evil, with room for little else. While some think of Trump as Haman, he isn't. He is more like Ahasuerus. King Ahasuerus' unlimited power and privilege seems to prevent him from even being able to discern the difference between good and evil. He has all the power to stop genocide, and yet he very casually goes along with it. He is following the whims of whoever he thinks will bring him more power. And like Ahasuerus, he is never willing to admit when he is wrong, which means he is the evil of chaos, a life-destroying force in the world. As Rabbi J. Michelson shared, Trump's supporters aren't responding to him, he's responding to them, which is why Ahasuerus is more insidious than Haman. Haman reveals his own evil, but Ahasuerus reveals ours. The Purim play invites us to ask, what role are we playing in the unfolding human drama? And to ask, whose side are we on? The Book of Esther is a story about resistance. Now, Queen Vashti did not appear in the version we told today, but she preceded Esther as the king's first queen. He holds a party that is extolled for having no limits. It actually is a 6-month party in Mar-a-Lago. In Shushan. She is summoned to appear before the king and his courtiers wearing her crown and nothing else. I didn't write the Book of Esther. Vashti refuses to do this. And in exchange, she preserves her dignity, but she is banished. Resistance can be dangerous. Mordecai resists the decree that he must bow down to Haman, which he felt would go against the Jewish laws about idolatry. Haman, the powerful court vizier, is so incensed that he plans to wipe out every Jew in Shushan to punish them for being different. Again, resisting power can be dangerous. Yet resistance to unjust laws and misuse of power is the path towards redemption. Esther also finds the courage to join the resistance. She knows there is a rule that people, especially women, could be put to death if they come to the king without being summoned. However, she cannot remain silent and complicit. She finds the courage to use her privileged status and to reveal her true identity as a Jew, as a foreigner, as an immigrant, and she names the evil doing of Haman. This time, resistance is rewarded, and in doing so, the tide of fate turns for her people. It is waves of people willing to resist evil that changes the course of history. And those who are the first to speak the truth to power often pay the harshest price for the sacrifice. We must re-story Vashti back. Purim also reminds us of all of the importance of the spiritual practice of humor in cultivating the resilience to survive. Humor is the language of the oppressed and part of nonviolent resistance. There are stories shared about World War II by concentration camp survivors that demonstrate this. In Auschwitz, they told a story of a band of Jewish prisoners being marched up and down in the coldest of winters. Their guard had them maintain military precision as they were walked to the brink of exhaustion. He ordered them to repeat after him the location they were at. The guard called out, "Geringstrasse." The prisoners replied, "Geringstrasse." On the next path, the guard called out, "Goebbels Alley," and the prisoners replied, "Goebbels Alley." And they reached the open field where roll call was taken. The guard shouted, "Hitlerplatz," which Platz means square, but in Yiddish, drop dead. And the prisoners replied, "Amen." The holiday of Purim is a call to action and a call to make noise about where we see genocides and mass killings of people happening today. And there are sadly a number of examples in places like Chad and the Sudan, Pakistan and Myanmar, and yes, Palestine. And anti-Semitism is on the rise. So this story is literal as well as being able to symbolize the oppression of others. Maybe we should be in the streets protesting percussively the incarceration rates of Black residents in Oregon. At 4 times the frequency of white incarceration rates, we have the power of our justice system exterminating the future well-being of Black families at alarming rates. There are many places we could look and decide where we will speak up and not be silent. The lessons of the story of Purim is that as long as we allow unjust powers to reign without restriction, no one is safe. The words of Martin Niemöller ring in our ears. First, they came for the socialists, and I did not speak out because I was not a socialist. Then they came for the trade unionists, and I did not speak out because I was not a trade unionist. Then they came for the Jews, and I did not speak out because I was not a Jew. But then they came for me, and there was no one left to speak for me. I'll end with this thought. The biblical figure that never appears in the story of Esther is God, who remains hidden throughout the text. In this story, as within our own times, living here in Shushan, it is up to us, ordinary human beings, to reach for something extraordinary, a love that binds each of us to all. To return to another thought from Ross Gay, and though attending to what we hate in common is too often all the rage, and it happens also to be very big business, noticing what we love in common and studying that might help us survive. It is only when Queen Esther's love for her people causes her to relinquish the privilege that separates her from the rest that she tips the scale towards redemption. It is about reaching for a love that allows us to see past the human created walls that separate us. It is about a love that will not let us go, but will not let us off the hook either. It is a love that reminds us perhaps you were made for such a time as this. And perhaps together, through our common sorrow and our common joy, we can rise up, resist, and reveal a new chapter of liberation. Amen, and may it be so. now in our going. May the light of love bless us and keep us. May it shine down upon us. May it be gracious unto us, and may it radiate out from within us. For this is the day that you and I are given to found the dynasty of love. Let us rejoice and be glad, for this is the day that we are given. Let us rejoice and be glad. Go in peace. Practice love. Practice joy. Groggers, one more time. Amen.